The trail wound higher into the mountains, the late afternoon sun stretching shadows long across the stone. Michael and Anna had hiked this range many times, but today felt different, quieter, almost too quiet. Birds were absent, and the wind slipped between the rocks with an eerie hum. Then it came, a sharp, guttural cry that froze them both in place. Michael stopped mid-step, his boots grinding on gravel. Anna turned, eyes wide. "Did you hear that?" she whispered. Michael nodded, scanning the cliffs. The sound came again, low and broken, like something caught between anger and pain. It wasn't the wind. It wasn't anything they had ever heard in these hills before. They moved off the path, following the noise up a slope of loose stone and twisted roots. The sound grew clearer with each step, a rasping whimper, punctuated by sudden bursts that echoed across the rocks. Michael's chest tightened. He had heard wounded animals before, but nothing like this. Anna clutched his arm when they reached the base of two towering cliffs. The cry rang out again, bouncing between the stone walls. Somewhere in that narrow space, something was alive and suffering. "Careful," Michael said, his voice low. They edged forward, boots slipping on smooth rock, until the gap came into view. That's when they saw it. A lynx, wedged tightly between the cliffs, its body twisted sideways. Only its head and one paw were visible. Its golden eyes flashed with terror as it hissed, teeth bared. The sound rattled through the air, fierce but weakened by exhaustion. Anna gasped, one hand over her mouth. Michael felt his stomach lurch. The animal thrashed weakly, claws scraping stone, but it couldn't move. The rock held it fast, every jerk draining more strength. "We need to call someone," Anna said quickly, pulling her phone from her pocket. Her face fell the instant she looked at the screen. No signal. Michael tried his own. Nothing. The cliffs cut them off, miles from the nearest town. He looked at Anna, her face pale, her breathing sharp. The helplessness hit them both. "What do we do?" she whispered. Michael's mind raced. They couldn't just leave the animal, but they also couldn't free it with their bare hands. It was wild, dangerous, unpredictable. He stared at the lynx, its paw trembling as it scraped the ground, a guttural sound rumbling from its throat. Beneath the fury in its eyes, there was fear. Pain. A plea. "You should go down," Michael said finally, forcing the words out. "Get help. Rangers, wildlife services, anyone." Anna's head snapped toward him. "Alone? You'll stay here?" He nodded firmly. "I'll stay close. Make sure it doesn't get worse. Someone has to." Anna hesitated, torn. She looked from Michael to the lynx, then back again. Her voice cracked. "Promise me you won't try anything crazy." "I'll be careful," he said, though even he didn't know if that was true. "Just hurry." They shared a quick embrace, clinging longer than they meant to. Then Anna adjusted her pack and turned toward the trail, glancing back again and again until the bend in the rocks swallowed her. Michael stood in the silence she left behind, the weight of it pressing on his chest. The lynx let out another cry, weaker this time. Michael crouched a few feet away, heart pounding. The animal's paw scraped once, then stilled. Its golden eyes fixed on him, not trusting, but desperate. He sat there, feeling every second stretch, the distance between Anna and help growing wider with each step she took away from him. He whispered under his breath, steadying himself. "All right, it's just you and me now." The lynx hissed again, the sound echoing against the stone, but Michael didn't back away. He knew he couldn't just sit and watch. Something had to be done. He shifted closer, testing the ground beneath his boots, and let the thought settle heavy in his mind. Maybe I can help." Michael shifted closer on the uneven ground, his knees pressing into sharp stone. His palms were slick with sweat, but he forced them open, keeping his movements slow and deliberate. The lynx glared at him through the narrow opening, its golden eyes glowing with a wild mix of fear and fury. Each breath came ragged, its chest heaving painfully against the rocks that pinned it. Michael raised his hand slowly, fingers spread wide to show he carried nothing threatening. "Easy," he whispered, his voice barely more than breath. "I'm not going to hurt you. Just take it easy." The lynx answered with a rasping hiss, its ears flattened tight against its head, fangs flashing white. Michael froze instantly, letting the sound fade into the heavy silence. He could feel the animal's panic vibrating in the air between them, sharp and raw. For a moment he considered backing away, but then his hand drifted toward his backpack. Anna had left him their supplies, trusting he might need them. His fingers closed around a protein bar, and he clung to it like an idea of hope. He tore the wrapper slowly, careful not to startle the animal. The scent of chocolate and nuts drifted into the cool air, sweet and strange against the sharp smell of dust and stone. The lynx's nostrils twitched, a tiny movement that gave Michael courage. He broke the bar in half and placed a piece on a flat stone, using a stick to slide it forward until it was within reach. Then he pulled back, heart pounding, hands trembling as he waited. For a long stretch of seconds, the lynx stayed perfectly still, eyes locked on him. The tension was unbearable, his chest aching with the need to breathe. Then, with a sudden lunge of its neck, the lynx hooked the food closer and shredded the wrapper with its teeth. The crunch of the bar echoed off the stone walls, loud in the silence. It devoured the food quickly, growling softly between bites, as though warning him not to try and steal it back. Relief washed through Michael, so strong his shoulders sagged. "That's it," he murmured under his breath. Good. He reached again for his bag, this time pulling out a bottle of water. Unscrewing the cap, he poured some into the plastic lid, then nudged it forward with the stick. The lynx sniffed suspiciously, but thirst overpowered fear. Its tongue flicked out, lapping greedily. Droplets spilled down its chin, darkening the stone beneath. For several long moments, the world shrank to the sound of an animal drinking desperately, fighting for its own survival. Michael exhaled slowly, feeling his own thirst press against his throat. He took a sip from the bottle, then capped it again. The lynx pulled back at last, chest still heaving but no longer as frantic. Its eyes no longer blazed with pure panic. There was mistrust, yes, but something subtle had shifted. A fragile line had been drawn between them, not trust but a kind of acknowledgement. Michael sat back on his heels, gaze never leaving the animal. Anna would be gone for hours. He pictured her hurrying down the winding trail, her face tight with determination, her heart heavy with worry. He couldn't let this creature fade before she returned with help. That thought pressed harder than the pain in his knees, harder than the fear in his chest. The lynx shifted, letting out a low, rasping growl as its body pressed harder into the unyielding rock. Its paw scraped the stone weakly, claws dragging without strength. Michael leaned forward again, the sound tugging at something inside him. "I know," he muttered, his voice hoarse. "You want out. You're fighting." He studied the way the rocks wedged against its ribs, pinning it in place. The gap was narrow, but maybe, just maybe, there was enough room to shift something. He adjusted his stance, moving slowly on his knees until he was close enough to feel the heat of the animal's breath against his skin. His pulse thundered in his ears, his whole body tense with the weight of the moment. The lynx growled again, louder this time, lips peeling back to reveal sharp teeth. Michael didn't move away. He kept his voice low, steady, forcing calm into every word. "You've had food. You've had water. I'm trying to help. Just let me see." He stretched out one hand, stopping inches from the rough stone that pinned the lynx. The air between them tightened, charged with danger. Every muscle in his body screamed to retreat, but he forced himself to stay still. The lynx's eyes narrowed, pupils thin slits, tracking every subtle motion of his fingers. Michael placed his palm against the stone, testing its weight. Cold grit pressed into his skin, the surface unyielding. He pressed gently at first, then harder, just enough to gauge the resistance. The rock didn't budge. He bit down on frustration, sweat dripping into his eyes. The lynx snarled suddenly, snapping its jaws close enough to make Michael jerk back. His heart leapt, but he held his ground, refusing to collapse into fear. He steadied his breathing, whispering almost to himself, "Just a little more. One more try. Don't give up now." Bracing his hand again, he pressed his shoulder closer to the stone, preparing for a real push this time. His body tensed, fully aware that the next heartbeat could bring either progress or pain. Michael pressed harder against the rough stone, his arm trembling with effort. For a second, he thought he felt it shift, just slightly. His pulse quickened. Maybe he could really move it. The lynx growled low, the sound vibrating through his chest. He kept his voice calm, whispering, "Just a little more, hold still." He pushed again, muscles straining. The lynx jerked violently, its paw shooting forward. Before he could react, claws raked across his forearm. The pain was white-hot, ripping a cry from his throat. He stumbled back, clutching his arm, blood spilling fast between his fingers. Ah, damn. He dropped to his knees, the world tilting for a moment. The lynx hissed, its ears flat, chest heaving. It hadn't lunged far, just instinct, pure and sharp. But the damage was done. 3 long gashes tore through Michael's skin, raw and bleeding. He scrambled for his backpack, panic clawing at him. His hands shook as he yanked out the first aid kit. Gauze, tape, wipes, all of it scattered on the ground. He pressed a cloth to the wound, sucking in a breath as the sting flared. Blood soaked the fabric instantly. He wrapped it tight, tying the gauze with clumsy fingers, every movement fueled by desperation. His breathing came fast, uneven. He leaned back against the rock, sweat cold on his forehead despite the mountain chill. Fear hit him harder than the pain. Rabies. Infection. The hours Anna would need to reach help. He was alone, and his body now carried the proof. Michael forced himself to steady his breath. Stay awake. Stay alert. He repeated it under his breath like a prayer. His arm throbbed, pulsing hot beneath the bandage. Each heartbeat seemed to push more fear through him. A sound cut through the haze. Not a hiss this time, but a broken cry from the lynx. It shook the air, long and aching. Michael lifted his head. The animal struggled, paw scraping helplessly, body trembling in the prison of stone. Its eyes burned, wild yet filled with something deeper, suffering. Michael swallowed hard. He should hate it for what it had done to his arm. He should back away, put distance between them. But he couldn't. The sound of that cry pinned him as surely as the rocks pinned the lynx. I'm still here, he whispered, voice rough. You're not alone. The minutes dragged. The light faded, shadows stretching over the cliffs. Michael sat slumped against the cold stone, clutching his injured arm, listening to the lynx's labored breathing. Each cry tore through him, a reminder that leaving wasn't an option. Not now. His vision blurred at the edges, but he forced himself upright. He shifted closer, just enough so the lynx could see him. Their eyes met, human and wild, both trapped in their own pain. He spoke again, soft but firm. Hold on. They're coming. Just hold on. The lynx let out another guttural cry, softer, weaker. Michael clenched his jaw, fighting the dizziness that threatened to pull him under. Anna was still far away. Help might take hours. He didn't know if he had that long. He didn't know if the lynx did either. But he stayed, because walking away now would mean letting it die alone in the rocks. Michael drifted in and out, his back pressed against the cold rock, his arm throbbing beneath the tight bandage. Time stretched endlessly, broken only by the sound of the lynx's ragged breaths. Each cry from the animal was weaker than the last. Michael clenched his teeth, fighting dizziness, waiting for any sign of help. Then, footsteps. Voices, faint at first, carried up the trail. Michael lifted his head, heart pounding. Relief crashed over him when Anna's voice cut through the silence. Mike! Mike, are you here? Over here! He shouted, his voice breaking. Within minutes, Anna appeared with 3 people in ranger uniforms, ropes coiled over their shoulders, heavy packs strapped to their backs. Her face went pale when she saw the blood on his arm, but he lifted a hand weakly. I'm okay, he said quickly. Just help it. The rangers moved with practiced caution, assessing the scene. One of them, a tall man with weathered skin, crouched low to study the lynx's position. He murmured to his colleagues, then looked at Michael. It's bad, but not impossible. We'll need to stabilize it before we try to move the rock. Michael nodded, pulling himself out of their way. Anna knelt beside him, her hands trembling as she touched his shoulder. You're hurt. We have to get you down. Not yet, he whispered. Not until it's out. The rangers set to work. One pulled a net-like restraint from his pack, another assembled a pole with a loop at the end. They spoke in clipped, focused tones. Michael watched, every nerve taut, as they maneuvered the loop around the lynx's neck, not to choke, but to control. The animal hissed weakly, struggling, but its strength was nearly gone. Steady, one ranger said. Easy. When the lynx was secure, they unpacked a small hydraulic spreader, the kind used in rescues. The machine groaned as it pressed against the rock, widening the crevice inch by inch. Stone scraped, dust falling in thin streams. Michael held his breath as the lynx cried out, claws flailing weakly. Almost there, the ranger grunted. Just a little more. The rocks shifted with a grinding crack. The lynx sagged forward, half collapsing into the waiting net. The rangers moved fast, sliding the net beneath its body, and securing it with straps. Its chest rose and fell shallowly, but it was breathing. "Got it," one shouted. Michael exhaled hard, his whole body shaking. Anna squeezed his hand, tears brimming in her eyes. The Rangers lifted the lynx carefully onto a stretcher designed for wildlife transport. And 4 was connected quickly, fluid dripping into its vein. The animal's eyes fluttered, barely open. "She'll make it," the ranger said firmly. "We'll get her to the center." Michael slumped back, exhausted. The tension in his chest loosened at last. Anna pressed her forehead against his, whispering, "You scared me half to death." He managed a weak smile. "Sorry." 2 rangers prepared to carry the lynx down the mountain, while the third turned to Michael. "We need to get you checked, too. Claw wounds can be dangerous. Rabies, infection, you need treatment right away." Michael looked at the stretcher bearing the lynx, then at his arm, wrapped and seeping. He nodded slowly. "All right, let's go." As they began the long descent, Michael cast one last glance at the place where the lynx had been trapped. The rocks were empty now, silent, but the memory of its cries lingered. He tightened his jaw, determined to see it through, both for himself and for the animal that had fought so hard to survive. The clinic smelled of antiseptic, sharp and clean, every surface gleaming under fluorescent light. Michael sat on the narrow bed, his arm freshly stitched and wrapped in a thick bandage that still pulsed with dull pain. The doctor, a tired-looking man with wire glasses and deep lines etched into his face, pulled off his gloves and shook his head slowly, as though both relieved and wary. "You're lucky," he said, his voice calm but firm. "Deep scratches, but no sign of infection yet. And the tests, no rabies in that lynx. You'll be sore for weeks, maybe months, but you'll heal." Relief swept through Michael so strongly, he almost laughed, a choked sound caught in his throat. His chest loosened, the tension he had carried since the attack finally breaking. Beside him, Anna squeezed his hand, her shoulders sagging for the first time since the climb. She bent close, kissed his temple, and whispered, "I thought I was going to lose you." Her voice trembled, heavy with days of fear. "Not today," he answered softly, his eyes meeting hers. "Not today." The following days blurred into one another. Bandage changes, checkups, and cautious rest filled their time. Michael carried the ache of his arm like a constant reminder of how close things had come. Yet amid the pain, there was good news. Calls from the rehabilitation center trickled in. The lynx was recovering. It had been dehydrated, malnourished, bruised badly by the crushing rocks, but the staff worked tirelessly. With fluids, careful feeding, and time, its strength began to return. The reports grew more hopeful with each update. Photographs arrived by email, showing the lynx in a large outdoor enclosure, its golden eyes brighter, its fur beginning to shine again under the sun. In one image it paced the fence, body lean but steady, a wild spirit slowly reclaiming itself. Michael and Anna visited once, standing together outside the enclosure. The lynx moved cautiously, watching them with guarded eyes, but no longer broken. The sound of its paws on the grass echoed differently than those cries in the cliffs. It was no longer desperation, but life. Weeks turned into a month. Then, one morning, word spread quickly through the local papers and the center's bulletin. The lynx had been released back into the wild. A photograph captured the moment, its body stretched in mid-leap, vanishing into a dense wall of trees, tail flicking with power and grace. Michael clipped the article and folded it carefully, keeping it tucked into his wallet as a token of what they had fought for together. On a crisp morning not long after, Michael and Anna returned to the mountain trail. The air smelled of pine, damp earth, and frost still clinging to shaded stones. The same path wound upward between cliffs, familiar now in a way that weighed heavier than before. They stopped at the spot where everything had unfolded. The rocks still bore faint scratches, ghostly marks that told a story few would ever know. Silence settled there, thick with memory. Anna reached out, her fingers brushing the stone as though touching a scar. "Hard to believe it really happened," she murmured, her eyes wet. Michael nodded, flexing his arm gently, the healed skin still tender. He looked out at the forest stretching wide beyond them, alive with bird calls, the whisper of wind, and the endless hum of nature carrying on. "We gave it a chance," he said. "That's what matters." They lingered, the quiet surrounding them like an embrace. The mountain no longer felt empty or cruel. It felt alive, carrying the echoes of struggle, survival, and a fragile bond between people and the wild. As they turned to continue their hike, Anna slipped her hand into his. Each step forward felt lighter, the burden of fear replaced by a weight of meaning. The memory of the lynx walked with them, silent but powerful, a reminder of how close they had come to losing both the animal and themselves, and how far compassion had carried them beyond that edge. Michael glanced back once more. The cliffs towered against the pale blue sky, ancient and unyielding. He could almost hear the cry again, the one that had frozen them in their tracks weeks earlier. Only now, in his mind, it was transformed. No longer a sound of pain, but of freedom, raw, wild, and unbroken. He smiled faintly and kept walking. The mountains held their secret close, but in the hearts of two hikers, the memory remained etched forever in stone, in silence, and in the enduring strength of compassion.